Most people notice it before they notice anything else. You step out of the truck in Holmes County, Ohio, or Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and there it is. Not manure, not hay. Vinegar. Sharp, sour, unmistakable. The smell hangs around the barns, the gardens, the root cellars, even the laundry lines. I used to think it was just part of farm life, until an Amish farmer named Samuel laughed when I asked him about it. He said, "That smell is money we don't have to spend." Then he walked me behind his barn and showed me a 55-gallon oak barrel that changed the way I think about almost every product in a modern grocery store. Because what was inside that barrel was not just vinegar. It was fuel stabilizer, livestock medicine, weed killer, food preservative, cleaning solution, fertilizer activator, rust remover, and one of the most effective household antimicrobials I have ever seen. One liquid, one fermentation process, one smell, and once I understood how deeply that single barrel connected to every system on the homestead, I understood why industrial agriculture spent almost 80 years replacing it with bottled chemicals that all do one small job badly while charging you separately for every single one. Stay with me, because before this video ends, I am going to show you the 1943 USDA bulletin that quietly admitted vinegar outperformed several synthetic agricultural treatments during wartime shortages. And I am going to explain why that document disappeared almost immediately after the chemical industry came back online after World War II. The smell on Amish farms is not accidental. It is the smell of a closed-loop system, and almost nobody outside those communities realizes what they are actually smelling. Let me start with what vinegar really is, because the modern grocery store has turned it into a condiment and almost erased its original purpose. Vinegar is acetic acid created through a two-stage fermentation process. First, yeast convert sugars into alcohol. Then, acetobacter bacteria convert that alcohol into acetic acid. That is it. Apples, corn, molasses, potatoes, berries, almost any carbohydrate source can become vinegar. And for most of human history, it was one of the most important liquids on Earth. Roman soldiers drank it mixed with water because the acidity killed pathogens. Farmers used it to preserve vegetables before refrigeration existed. Sailors cleaned wounds with it. Livestock keepers used it to control infections long before antibiotics. Medieval households used it to prevent mold and rot inside food stores. Vinegar was not a specialty product. It was infrastructure. And nowhere in America did that old understanding survive more completely than inside Amish communities. I first realized how central it was after spending a morning with a family near Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Every building on the property smelled faintly of vinegar. The chicken coop, the dairy room, the greenhouse, even the laundry shed. Finally, I asked why. The wife smiled and said that vinegar touches everything here. She was not exaggerating. In the chicken waterers, they added a small amount of apple cider vinegar every day, 1 tablespoon per gallon. The acidity helps suppress harmful bacterial growth and reduces algae buildup inside metal and plastic drinkers. Poultry science studies from multiple agricultural universities have documented measurable reductions in pathogenic bacterial populations when low concentrations of organic acids are added to water systems. The Amish had been doing it for generations. Then there was the dairy barn. Stainless steel pails were rinsed with diluted vinegar after cleaning because the acid dissolves mineral buildup and inhibits bacterial films without leaving chemical residues behind. The greenhouse soil received vinegar-activated compost teas to help break down alkaline mineral accumulation. Garden weeds along fence rows were sprayed with horticultural Vinegar strong enough to burn foliage without contaminating nearby crops. Even the windows in the farmhouse were cleaned with vinegar diluted into rainwater because it cuts oils and evaporates without streaking. Everywhere I looked, the same liquid kept appearing. And then Samuel showed me the fuel shed. This is where things became impossible to ignore. In one corner sat several glass jars filled with gasoline. One was cloudy and separated. One was clean and stable. The difference was vinegar. Small quantities were used during moisture management and cleaning of old fuel systems. Ethanol blended gasoline absorbs atmospheric moisture. That moisture contributes to corrosion and varnish formation inside older carburetors and metal storage tanks. Samuel used vinegar as part of a maintenance cleaning cycle on small engines and fuel containers because acetic acid dissolves oxidation and mineral deposits that commercial cleaners charge 10 times more to address. He held up a bottle of store-bought carburetor cleaner and laughed. He said, "Mostly solvent and marketing." Then he pointed at the vinegar barrel and said that one does 6 jobs before breakfast. I need to be careful here, because vinegar is not magic, and it is not a replacement for every modern chemical. What shocked me was how many separate commercial products existed primarily because households stopped producing and understanding one incredibly versatile, fermented liquid. By 1950, vinegar had largely disappeared from industrial agriculture except as a food ingredient. The timing matters. During World War II, chemical shortages forced the USDA and agricultural colleges to revisit older farm practices. In 1943, the USDA published wartime farm maintenance circulars about acetic acid applications for sanitation, preservation, mineral removal, and equipment cleaning, because industrial chemical production was prioritized for the war effort. Farmers were encouraged to substitute vinegar-based processes wherever possible. The documents acknowledged that diluted acetic acid solutions effectively controlled bacterial contamination in many agricultural settings. But after the war, everything changed. Synthetic chemical manufacturing capacity exploded. The same factories producing industrial compounds for wartime logistics pivoted into consumer agriculture and cleaning products, pesticides, detergents, preservatives, and pharmaceuticals. Suddenly, one cheap homemade liquid was competing against entire product categories worth billions of dollars. And here's the detail that should bother you. Vinegar cannot be patented. Apples fermenting into acetic acid is not intellectual property. Nobody can monopolize fermentation. Nobody can trademark a bacterial process humans understood thousands of years ago. But branded chemical products generate recurring revenue. A household making vinegar in a barrel behind the barn is a household not buying weed killer, not buying descaling solution, not buying livestock additives, not buying disinfectants, not buying fabric softeners, not buying produce wash. One fermentation barrel quietly replaces an aisle of products. That is why the smell vanished from most American homes by the 1960s. Not because vinegar stopped working, because industrial chemistry became more profitable. Let me show you how deep this goes. In Amish root cellars, diluted vinegar solutions are often used to wipe storage shelving before harvest season. Why? Mold control. Acetic acid creates an environment hostile to many fungal species without contaminating food storage surfaces. Commercial fungicidal cleaners now dominate that market. Same job, higher cost. In Amish laundry systems, vinegar softens mineral-heavy well water and breaks down soap residues in fabric. Modern households buy separate water softeners and fabric conditioners instead. Same chemistry, different packaging. In livestock barns, vinegar solutions help reduce ammonia odors by influencing pH conditions in waste-heavy environments. Commercial odor neutralizers replace that too. Same principle, different label. The further I dug into this, the stranger the pattern became. The Amish were not using vinegar as some nostalgic folk remedy. They were using it because it consistently reduced dependency on purchased systems. And that is the thread running through almost everything they preserve. They do not reject technology simply because it is modern. They reject systems that create permanent dependency when simpler systems already work. A barrel of homemade vinegar does not require a subscription. It does not require a supply chain. It does not stop working because a corporation changes prices. And the economics become absurd once you calculate them. A gallon of industrial cleaning solution might cost $12. Livestock supplements, another $20. Produce wash, another $8. Weed killer, another $25. Water conditioner, another $15. Meanwhile, the base ingredient for vinegar is often waste produce that would otherwise be composted. Windfall apples, bruised peaches, excess berries, scraps. The Amish convert agricultural waste into a multifunction liquid that replaces entire categories of purchased products. That is not primitive, that is systems engineering. Now here is the part that genuinely surprised me. The smell itself serves a purpose. Strong vinegar odors inside barns and processing areas act as a sensory indicator that acidic sanitation systems are active. Several Amish families told me the same thing independently. If you stop smelling vinegar, something is not getting cleaned. Think about how different that is from modern sanitation culture, where everything smells artificially floral or chemically sterile regardless of whether it is actually clean. The vinegar smell means active acid washing is happening. It means fermentation systems are alive. It means bacterial control is being maintained continuously, instead of occasionally blasted with expensive chemicals. And once you notice it, you realize every Amish farm smells almost identical because they are all running variations of the same integrated fermentation infrastructure. But the most important use of vinegar was the one almost nobody talks about anymore because it directly threatened one of the most profitable industries in America: preservation. Before refrigeration became universal, vinegar preserved harvests through winter. Cucumbers, beans, cabbage, peppers, eggs, beets. Entire food systems depended on acetic acid preservation. The average Amish pantry still contains shelves lined with vinegar-preserved food because it dramatically reduces dependence on continuous electrical refrigeration. And that matters more than most people realize. Modern refrigeration created dependence not just on electricity, but on centralized food distribution itself. Vinegar preservation allowed seasonal abundance to remain edible for months without external energy input. That old system represented independence from both utilities and supply chains simultaneously. Once electric refrigeration became dominant after World War II, vinegar preservation was reframed culturally as old-fashioned poverty food instead of resilient infrastructure. But the Amish never abandoned it because the math never stopped making sense. 1 barrel of vinegar preserves harvests, sanitizes equipment, stabilizes systems, extends shelf life, reduces chemical purchases, supports animal health, and replaces dozens of specialized products. That smell drifting across Amish farms is not nostalgia. It is efficiency. Before I show you the exact barrel setup Samuel uses to produce enough vinegar for an entire year on one homestead, there is one more thing you need to understand. The medical industry once relied heavily on vinegar too, and what happened to that knowledge after 1955 explains almost everything. By 1955, vinegar was still listed in multiple American medical and agricultural reference manuals as a routine antiseptic, digestive aid, equipment sanitizer, and livestock treatment support. Not a miracle cure, not magic, just a cheap, effective, acidic solution that solved dozens of small daily problems well enough that families did not need to purchase specialized products for every situation. Then antibiotics exploded into civilian markets. Synthetic disinfectants became a billion-dollar industry. Commercial food preservation scaled nationally. And suddenly, the old fermentation system started disappearing from American homes almost overnight. But the Amish did not stop using them. Because unlike most of the country, they never reorganized their lives around centralized industrial convenience. Samuel showed me the barrel system behind his barn before I left. Nothing complicated. A food-grade oak barrel. Apple scraps from cider pressing. Rainwater. A cloth cover. Time. First the sugars fermented into alcohol. Then the alcohol turned into vinegar through natural acetobacter cultures already living in the environment. No commercial packets. No expensive equipment. The vinegar mother floating on top looked almost alien, thick and translucent like jellyfish skin. That single barrel produced enough vinegar annually for cleaning, preservation, livestock systems, gardening, laundry, and fuel maintenance across the entire property. And here's the part that stayed with me. Every output from one system became input for another. Windfall apples became vinegar. Vinegar cleaned dairy equipment. The rinse water went into compost systems. The compost fed next year's orchard. The orchard produced next year's apples. Nothing wasted. Nothing dependent on an outside corporation. That is why the smell matters. You are smelling a closed-loop economy. Now compare that to the modern household. Separate products for glass cleaner, for mold removal, for fabric softener, for produce washing, for weed killing, for descaling, for odor removal. Every bottle purchased separately. Every problem monetized individually. The craziest part is how much of that infrastructure could still be replaced by one fermented liquid most people now think belongs only on salad. Vinegar. I went back later and asked Samuel why Amish communities never abandoned vinegar the way the rest of America did. He gave me the simplest answer I heard during this entire investigation. Because it kept working. That was it. No ideology, no conspiracy theory, no romantic nostalgia. If a system works for 200 years and costs almost nothing, they keep using it. Modern America abandoned thousands of low-cost systems, not because they failed, but because industrial replacements created larger economies around dependence. The smell drifting across Amish farms is the smell of people who never fully entered that dependency cycle. Smell. And once you recognize it, you start noticing something else. Almost every old-fashioned Amish practice follows the exact same pattern. Low recurring cost, high durability, minimal outside dependency, simple physics, simple chemistry, simple biology. The vinegar barrel is not really about vinegar. It is about maintaining control over the systems that keep a household alive. That is why the smell is everywhere. And if you are the kind of person who believes older knowledge was not always replaced because something better came along, then you already understand why this matters. Drop a comment below and tell me this. What is the one old household method your grandparents used that completely disappeared once commercial products took over. Because the deeper I dig into these systems, the more I realize something uncomfortable. A lot of what we call progress was really just the monetization of things families once did for themselves.